Well, last but not least is Colombia, where the Inca were stopped. We have with us today Celina Rincón, who is advisor to the Director of Heritage of the Colombian Ministry of Culture for managing World Heritage issues. She will be speaking on Inka Expansion, the road network in Colombia.
Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you very much for being here to listen to us. I want to send out greetings and hugs to the Smithsonian from the Ministry of Culture. We admire and appreciate your work so much, especially from the experience with the Folklife Festival in Colombia. It's an honor to be here. Congratulations for being part of this celebration of the first anniversary of our inclusion on the World Heritage Site. We're one of 1,007 sites included in the list now. And I think right now it's one of the most interesting sites, and certainly the first that includes so many countries. And we're being taken as a model for other sites, the Silk Road, and I don't know how many countries are involved there. But we, as the Capañán, the Andean Road site, are sharing some information about how to work together as different countries for this type of recognition. I have here the main notes so that I don't forget the ideas as we begin here. In Colombia, we always refer to the whole Andean road system. It's curious that I have my last presentation, and it's the last little stretch of the northern road. We have 16 kilometers in separate sections, but it's a different kind of heritage from the monumental sites that we've seen in Chile and Peru. However, it does replicate a good part of the Inca and pre-Inca construction techniques and patterns. All the images and photos that you see are taken from their file, which is a fantastic document, which I hope you can consult. More than 1,400 pages of studies and research. And speaking of this system that meets 4 of the 6 criteria for being part of the World Heritage Site list. We have areas with 232 communities associated. In terms of kilometers, it's about 600 kilometers. As you mentioned, 230 communities. And what I was able to count in the files, more than 600 professionals involved in more than 15 years of research. This is without counting people from other institutions that worked on logistics and coordination and all of the work in addition to the research that's made this nomination and recognition possible. So I think all of the areas of conservation and management of the sites, working together with the various countries has been very important. Here we have a table where we have only 17 kilometers of the almost 700 kilometers, but it's a very interesting area because it's the southern area of the Department of Nariño. And it's the end of the Andes system. We don't have any archaeological goods there. And I think we have it, but we haven't been able to research and record them. And I think with this project, we have as a great opportunity to work with the communities and we've begun to participate in this process as of 10 years ago. This process was carried out in Colombia with the University of Nariño, and the Anthropological University. And we've had to have a lot of financial and logistical support to be able to do this. The research is, of course, the most important, but we need all the support and commitment of various institutions, as well as financial support has made this possible. So I just want to say that this very complex system, what we were able to highlight at the beginning, and I as an architect would like to mention, that this system is more than 6 30,000 kilometers. Why did we just choose 700 kilometers for the nomination with 300 components? That's because the first researcher... Oh, people are asking me to go slower. Okay, thank you. They agreed on a series of criteria. Criteria for territorial representativity. In other words, what is the most important part of the whole territory and the regional diversity, the context, the functional context, and the network of secondary roads in terms of the needs for economic, social, political, and logistical occupation, the kinds of administrative centers, productive centers that were associated. What was the function of the road in the primary and secondary network? And we saw some of this in the presentation of Peru in terms of the genius of the civil engineering. And I think what's important here is the relationship with local communities. How can we work with the communities to work with sustainable development from the socio-economic and cultural and, of course, environmental point of view to be able to make progress in this project for recognizing the heritage? It should benefit the local communities. And I wanted to emphasize, that beginning in 2005, we made we signed up to, starting 2001, we joined Chile and Peru and Argentina. We started to have meetings about the World Heritage Project, and thanks to this center, we were able to have the logistical coordination between all of the countries, and that was one of the most complicated tasks, not only in terms of research, but also in institutional terms. Next year, we had 2 main meetings in Peru. The group of presidents signed agreements to facilitate not only the steps that we are going to take, but also the obtention of financial resources. The following year, we were able to sign agreements with UNESCO and with the IDB in Peru with a development plan for the Capañán, and that's where Colombia was invited for the first time, and we feel very glad that we were able to be part of this. In 2005 to 2010, there was technical progress in each country, field work, historical research, looking at states of conservation, typological analyses. And in 2011, we were able to complete the most important research to have a single file. So we were able to put together all of the files from the various countries into a single document for rationale for being included on the list. And I think the Ministry of Culture played an important role there. In 2012, it was a year of consolidation and spreading the news about the project. People went out to the countryside and talked to the communities. People went out to schools, talked to mayors. In 2013, the processes of communication continued to be strengthened, because one of the things that UNESCO wanted to see was how involved the communities were all in this project for the preservation of the heritage. In 2014, we were able to be included on the list of World Heritage Sites, and we worked directly with the conservation plan, and we did an inventory, and we have a project called the Capañán School that I can tell you about in just a moment. So I think it's good that other colleagues have presented this map. And what I'd like to highlight here and really bring some conclusions from this is that the 4 criteria that for which Capañán was included on the World Heritage Sites had to do with human values of the past and the present, and we hope in the future as well. A unique testimony of a cultural tradition, in this case pre-Inca and Incan. Technological, outstanding technology, in this case civil engineering and architecture, and a strong association with living cultures. So the whole aspect of material and non-material heritage. I'm going to go over each of the criterias. Here we have the typologies of the different kinds of roads. We have some with walls, some with channels. We had a great presentation yesterday about the construction of bridges, and this criteria is related to all of the construction techniques, the festivals, the rituals, the various customs. And also with UNESCO, we had to justify that it was a holistic site that conserved elements of form and style and material and construction techniques. And here I wanted to highlight that this is a unique network in UNESCO. Several parts have been we're looking to have some geographical maps so that when people are on the road, they can see its role and its part in the whole Andean system. And so that's part of what we have as the management plan for the site. Authenticity has been an important criteria also, that we haven't had any considerable changes or anything that would have damaged the authenticity of the site. Basically, this has been maintained basically because the communities themselves have maintained the infrastructure with traditional knowledge and materials, and that's what we're trying to strengthen. So the authenticity is seen not only in physical terms, but also in terms of construction technology and on social issues. So the heritage of Capañán has physical value, but also social value. So after identifying and evaluating this road and making maps, we've had to see what's the most important parts and why, how can we manage such a large site that needs so much in the way of resources and institutional commitment and legal commitment to be able to maintain. We emphasized that this was a transnational experience and that all of the states were behind it, and that and we need to talk about the commitment of each country and each government and its commitment to the neighboring countries, but that each country would also have to follow its own legislation in terms of material heritage and non-material heritage and the protection and conservation of resources. In the case of Capañán, we designed 2 international coordination systems, one to draw up the file to begin with and another one afterwards. Peru did all of the technical meetings, the coordination of those meetings, and had the secretariat for the project. And in the case of Colombia, we had the University of Nariño, which was able to coordinate directly with the 8 municipalities involved. This is the complete management system of Capañán. Here in the international structure, here's the national structure, and then there's the regional and provincial or local arena there. Here is when you're talking about meetings of the secretariat, the technical secretariat, and you have a lot of definition of priorities. But here we have an international committee. We've got ambassadors. Ambassadors before UNESCO are the most important ones. And of course, a lot of this work goes down to the regional and local levels. In Colombia, as I mentioned, we're working primarily the Colombian Institute of Anthropology and History, the Foreign Ministry, the Institute of Culture, the University of Cariño, Nariño. And we also took a delegation from Colombia to UNESCO. We also have a government here, which is the Department of Nariño and its 8 municipalities. The system also has to be related to traditional management systems. So we're not just talking about governments, but also how decisions are made in various communities. Many of them from the very beginning have expressed interest in this project, that they hope that it might bring tourism into the various communities. And there are some models where there's been some interpretation of this heritage following the pattern of Chile, where the communities themselves are presenting the cultural heritage. And finally, a delicate issue that was mentioned has to do that we're in seismic areas, so the structures are under a certain amount of threat of earthquake. In Colombia, I hope you can see the yellow color of the different sections of the road here. Those are the best preserved sections. Many of them have been turned into roads, but there are 9 sections, and altogether it's 17 kilometers that go through 8 municipalities from the border of Ecuador to the city of Pasto. In Colombia, the Andean road system helps to order the space and allows communication between different levels of height, from 1,800 to 300 meters of altitude. It allowed access for the Inca to occupy many communities here. We have different kinds of roads, some with retainer walls. We have one in the border with Ecuador in this Rumichaca section. Understand Rumichaca means stone. It also, according to the chronicles, it was next to one of the main Inca structures there. Here in the maps, you can see the current uses. You have the section of the territorial zone. Here you see the bridge. In Colombia, what has been strengthened is the analysis not just of the roads and the structures, but of the whole broad territory, of the uses and the threats of those uses, and especially the territorial ordering plans needed to be taken into consideration, those of the state of Colombia. These maps show potential risks, deforestation of watersheds, landslides is another threat, and so there's various symbols to indicate the various risks. Often there's agriculture here, grazing livestock, and it also has a few urban areas. This is the second section that is called the San Pedro section. It's basically an alley carved into rock with some gutters, and we also have some houses there. It's a section that joins the town of San Pedro with a river nearby. And there's a road that's being used for the Virgen de las Lajas. So it's a pilgrimage road as well. It's the Virgin of las Lajas. And here we can show that for all of the Andean system is using this kind of typological analysis of constructions. In the case of Colombia, it was the University of Nariño, geographers and students who did the research. And we've only done this kind of research in this part of Colombia. The other 1,000 cultural heritage sites in the UNESCO list does not have this type of specialized research that accompanies it. Here we're identifying general uses as well as the threats and risks in each section. In the case of section 2 in San Pedro in white, you see a primarily agricultural use, and the threats that have to do with hail and landslides. And in all of the 9 sections, we have this type of identification and analysis. There's a section called La Cofradía, which is between the highlands and the river. And you can see there's a wider road there. Some of it goes through the mountainsides where people have walked. Here we wanted to highlight that there are some other kinds of threats. It's a place where a possible gas pipeline might go through there. And this is infrastructure in the national arena. And so there's other entities of the states that would be involved, other sectors of the state that would have to get involved here. Here we have an area that is an urban area, but with a very small number of people. It's not very large, and we have different kinds of usage here. We have a residential area, an institutional area, and the mayor of the municipality is looking to see how he might be able to improve the roads, and when he wasn't thinking about the fact that the Inka Road was going through there. So part of the work that we've had to do is to convince the people there that it's worth the effort to highlight within the urban area the conservation of the Inka Road. Section 5, you can see all the codes because each of the sections are classified with coordinate systems that are required by UNESCO. We have the number of the sections there. There's retaining walls there. Most of them are stone. Another type of locating current uses. Here are some areas that are vulnerable to landslides. And these analyses are to try to have some effect on the zoning plans of the municipality and what kinds of activities will be allowed in various places. That would also apply in rural areas. Here we're in an area of agricultural production and livestock. And people who were able to see the OAS presentation will know that this is one of the most beautiful parts of the road. It's practically a straight line. And even though they're 17 kilometers, they're not easily accessed and they're not continuous 17 kilometers. So to find them, you have to walk for several hours in some cases because there's no particular roads to get to those sites. But it's one of the most beautiful landscapes that you can see there. So it's a road that one of the recommendations of the UNESCO was to see whether the limits proposed for the declared sections corresponded to a line that was parallel to the road, or what kind of criteria should we use to be able to represent that part of the road better. So there's a big part of the road that you can enjoy visually, but there's a functional aspect as well. You will see that several of these are similar. There's another section here. The final one is the section of Los Ajos. And this has always been known as the cobblestone road. And it was used to begin Holy Week processions and pilgrimages. And what you find here on the road, as I was saying, is not the monumental infrastructure, the huge things that you see in other places, but it's more of a domestic architecture construction aimed at a smaller scale kinds of things. But on a social level, it's important because it's living and people continue to build it, to add stones. And there's something very important in the non-material heritage there. And that's one of the errors that sometimes gets committed because sometimes we don't think about the non-material part. I think I turned it off. Oh, there it is. So here in summary, the primary threats. What has to be done in the management? One, we have to preserve the universal exceptional value of the site. As all the presentations have said, there's 4 criteria. Has to do with the value of the non-material heritage, the technological, the value for the political system, but also how to confront all of the threats. And here are some examples. On the one hand, you have the possibility of an oil pipeline. Here you have vulnerability to landslides, which the El Niño phenomenon in Colombia that has affected like 70% of the territory. It can be something that leaves us with many years to recover from when there's a landslide. And here is an area that's affected primarily hail that affects crops, but there's also a geological fault line there as well. So UNESCO is asking for integrated risk management plans for cultural heritage sites. So not just for Capañán, but all sites that are involved in the list. And so that means we need to prepare ourselves and work with other institutions and other countries to see how to reach agreements so that the communities can be as prepared as possible, at least in the event of any one of these dangers. The management plan is the same for the entire file. There's 2 important programs, the conservation program and the management program. The conservation program is indirect and direct. The indirect is associated with territorial planning, legislation, conditions, and the direct conservation has to do with maintenance tasks, structural stabilization, etc. And I should say that in Colombia, we have a very nice source of resources that comes from the tax on cell phones that's handled by the departments, and these resources can be used for maintenance works in the communities. So this is something that could be periodic. As long as people are talking more on their cell phones, we'll have more resources. And in terms of the management plan, that's made of 4 systems: the protection system, social use system, and I've mentioned also the good living, capacity building, as well as other management issues. And there's also a need for more research to develop the theme more from the archaeological point of view, because it's very important to look at the non-material cultural aspects and their relationship with production aspects. It's any issue of cultural heritage has to be related to the way of life of the communities and their ability to live and to sustain themselves economically.
En el tema de uso social,
in terms of social use, we have knowledge, value, socialization. Now we have a pending issue because there's going to be a change in the local government, a new mayor. We will need to pitch the project again and hopefully we will get the necessary commitment. It has to be developed from the municipalities, because otherwise Bogota will not get involved in any successful project if the local communities don't own it first. There is a pending task with regards to sustainable and responsible tourism, and we will be working with the corresponding ministry. They will have to allocate the necessary resources to the places in the list of World Heritage Sites. We need to meet certain objectives, not only cultural, but also what it has to do with tourist infrastructure. In other words, how are people getting to see the trail, the road, if they have some sort of disability, for example. So, and it's not good to develop tourist plans, tourism plans, without taking into account people with disabilities. So we're trying to strengthen this, as well as the presence of Capacidades in school programs. We did a presentation in 60 schools to children between 10 and 14 years old, so they could hear about Capacidades. They did some research work in this regard. All this has been led by the university, and it's a way of letting kids know about their world heritage in their country. So, like I said, it's not only the universities. We're working directly with elementary and secondary schools. And then we have a community participation project. How will we organize it so that this also brings benefits to the surrounding populations? I just want to say that the project itself was more important than being part of the World Heritage Site list. We've been able to learn from the other countries that we have worked together, and we try to implement part of the knowledge and our experience managing this site in the other sites that we have, both the ones included in the World Heritage Sites list as well as the ones that are not. We have this place that is a national heritage site. It's closer to the people, also underscoring material heritage. If we didn't work for this, our work would have no sense, would make no sense. So I hope you can get to know part of the Capacidades, either starting or ending in Colombia, because one thing is to hear about it, and a very different one is to live it, to walk on it. It's something very special. Thank you very much.